Hello everyone, sorry I ended so abruptly in the last screencast. I have 15 minutes of record time, and you might notice that one went up right until the very last, basically nanosecond. The one that loaded onto my computer said 14 minutes, 59 seconds, and 14:59.96. So that's as close as you can get and fit it in there. So that's why I ended so suddenly. So here, knowledge of, back to knowledge of and knowledge about, okay? Knowledge of acquaintance. Knowledge of means I have experience, and this is going to be the sensation. Knowledge about is everything that I've been put on that sensation, okay? So the mere taste is just a taste, okay? But then for me to taste it and recognize it and put meaning to it, for me to taste it, that's just a biological function of taste, okay? For me to taste and go, pear, or if you don't like pears, so, pear, then that's the knowledge about, okay? You put a name, you made meaning of it. The knowledge of is just the sensation. The knowledge about is the perception. Now this might sound easy, but let's just see where we're gonna. So what does this mean for us with intrapersonal communication? So here we go. So I'm gonna read these things to you, and it's gonna be helping us pin down a little more and locate intrapersonal communication. Okay, so if we hold that the act of communication is active, okay, constructive of reality. We said that last week, right? We said that when we communicate, we co-produce, co-maintain, co-transform reality, okay? So communication is active, constructive of reality, as opposed to receptive of reality. Make sense? So communication is not on the sensation end, it's on the perception end, right? And that should make sense. That should make sense because if I poke my finger, it hurts immediately. That happens before I'm able to have the meaning attached to it. The taste is the same way. If I burn my finger, if I drink my hot coffee, all of those things have sense and then meaning, okay? And that's really kind of how we live as human beings. Your senses are going to hit you first. And so it's one of the reasons why if I'm sitting here at work and all of a sudden I go, and I smell something and I can't identify it, I'll go, what's that smell? See, and the smell is the sense, me not knowing what it is, me not knowing how to classify it, me trying to figure out, is somebody, cooking salmon in the microwave? Is somebody, what are they, is it a good smell? Is it a bad smell? That's all on the perception end, okay? So then it would follow, excuse me, that we would locate intrapersonal communication at least at the level of perception within the cognitive domain, okay? So we're talking about things happening up here in our brains. So you have sensation, then perception. We're saying that intrapersonal communication would be on the level of perception. Make sense? All right, it's constructive of reality. So similarly, if we characterize intrapersonal communication as a symbolic behavior. Now, I mentioned this in my examples above, where if I drink my hot coffee, the sense is hot, the symbolic behavior is, wow, this is hot coffee. I'm identifying coffee as different tasting from the pear, right? That requires symbolic behavior. So, if we characterize intrapersonal communication as symbolic behavior, as involving encoding or decoding, then we locate intrapersonal communication at least at the level of perception. Okay, so both of these are saying that intrapersonal communication is at the level of perception. We're at knowledge about, okay? We're at the level of constructive reality, not just receptive reality, constructive of reality, okay? Hang in here with me. I will make myself hide. So, if we define intrapersonal communication in terms of the cognitive operations involved, then at the very least, it is an act involving conceptual thought, not just cognitive processes. Now, the cognitive process or processes would just be the things that have to occur for me to understand that I've got something in my mouth or whatever, okay? Conceptual thought is me having conceptual thought to apply to what I'm talking about. So back to the pear, what this again would mean is that I take a bite of the pear. The taste is sense. The sense is cognitive process, okay? The sense is cognitive process, all right? So that's what that would be. The conceptual thought would be, this is a pear. This is a good pear. This pear is at just the right level of ripeness. This pear needed to sit on the counter for another day or two. This sure would be better if it was refrigerated. You see what I'm saying? So that's the difference. So intrapersonal communication involves conceptual thought. It's not just the sense. Okay? So I'm going to move forward here. I'm going to come back. So here we go. If what has been said so far leads us to the conclusion that meaning making, and that's really what we're talking about with conceptual thought, is the meaning making, okay? Either encoding or decoding or both, because you make meaning on both ends, encoding, decoding, right? Then we must consider that communication may occur whenever an individual makes meaning. Now, I think that some of you would have jumped from one cannot not communicate to this. I think that some of you would have said, well, if I'm always communicating, then I'm always making meaning, and so there we go. But it's a little more complex than that. And for intrapersonal communication, we really do have to have some differentiation between the sense and the perceptual piece with reality, our relationship with reality in the meaning-making process. So we're talking about meaning-making now, okay? So whether or not what is decoded originates inside or outside the body of the intrapersonal communicator. So we're talking about having whatever we're decoding, wherever it originates, and whether or not what is encoded is actually expressed, leaked, or given off, okay? Intrapersonal communication has occurred. You see how this is all coming to bear now? This should be sort of kind of bringing it all together, right? So let's just say whether or not what is decoded originates inside or outside of the body. My smell example, that is something that originated outside my body. I am not just talking about something that happened internally. I'm having a sense experience with something, and then I'm having to decode that smell. And I'm like, hey, that smells good. Is somebody, what are they doing in there? It smells really, whatever it is. By the way, there's no smell. I just made that up. There's no good or bad smell in my office right now. So whether it originates inside or outside my body, so that's an outside originating thing. I can originate it inside of myself. I can be sitting here in my office preparing for this screencast and sitting here to myself going, okay, what's going to make sense to do first? What should I do second? How am I going to segue from this one thing on these crazy things that it seems it's going to have to talk about, like knowledge of and knowledge about, and then all this other. How am I going to make sense of that? All of that originated inside of me. I'm not reacting to anything really outside. There's no smell, there's no taste, there's no touch. It's all just me kind of having these rumination thoughts. Either way, intrapersonal communication has occurred. Okay? Now, so to say this another way, let me move this. Intrapersonal communication concerns the processes of assigning meaning and the products of assigned meaning. So when I am talking about intrapersonal communication, it's not, way back at the front end of this slideshow, we talked about how it's tempting just to say, it's communication within yourself. But actually, what we're seeing here is that intrapersonal communication involves making meaning. And so we have to put this into the equation, okay? Any of you have had me in class know that we talk quite a bit about making meaning in my communication classes. And so for some of you, this might have seemed like an easier, well, of course. But if you've never had me in class before, we really needed to make sure that we came to this conclusion right here, okay? So communication with making meaning, that's really what we're talking about, okay? So we're going to move forward now. Sorry, I suddenly have a runny nose. I don't know why. I'll try not to gross you out too much. So here we go. So to summarize all of this, meaning making is now an inherent part of us talking about the intrapersonal communication process. Okay, so bringing it all together now, this view of communication places emphasis on the interpreter, on the receiver, okay, which is good because no interactant is required. I can make meaning within myself. I can sit here and I can prep this screencast and I can do all of this stuff within my own mind and my own heart, whatever you want to say, and make meaning. And so no interactant is required. According to this view, if I think something like, man, I have got to get the laundry done, or, and let me hide myself, man, I have got to get the laundry done, you have experienced intrapersonal communication. Or when you think that a scene is beautiful, you look at a Rocky Mountain sunset and you go, oh, that's so pretty. You've experienced intrapersonal communication, right? The sense piece of this is you see them, but all the rest of it, all the rest of the fact that this thing over here is laundry and that it needs to be done, that's intrapersonal. The sense data is light waves, okay? The sense data over here is just, well, over here too, it's the same thing. It's just light waves for both of these. They hit your eyes, it travels to your brain, you see the light waves. Everything after that requires meaning making. And so for us in here, this is good for us because it means that intrapersonal communication can occur and can exist. Okay, so back to our questions. Let's answer these questions really quickly. So our first question: when would we say we're talking to ourselves, and when would we say we're thinking about something? They don't seem to be the same thing. So first of all, they're not the same thing, but are they both intrapersonal? Yes, both are intrapersonal communication because both require making meaning. Okay. So are they the same thing? Is talking to myself and I'm thinking about something the same thing? No. But are they both intrapersonal communication? Yes, they are. Now, the second one here, is communicative behavior a special case of behavior, or is all behavior communication? I actually am of two minds of this, but here's the answer I'm going to offer for us this semester because this will offer us the most ground to explore. Okay, here we go. We're going to say, just for sake of experimentation, and I know that we could argue this all semester, but we're going to say all behavior is communication on some level because it requires conceptual thought. Okay, now the reason why I'm going that way is so that we can really dig in and explore our behavior this semester and look at how it's tied to how we intrapersonally communicate. And then to finish off this section of our screencast, when are we engaged in intrapersonal communication? When we are making meaning with and or within ourselves. That is when we are engaged in intrapersonal communication. And so now you can see how far we've come from, intrapersonal communication is just communicating with yourself, right? We've come a long way, and I'm going to bring myself back up. We've come a long way from that now. Now, what we're saying is that I am engaged in intrapersonal communication when I am making meaning within myself. We've talked about it being on the level of perception, which is constructive of reality. And this idea of it being constructive of reality, that it being linked to when we're making meaning with or within ourselves, that really brings up how important and how cool and how fun and how really transformative studying intrapersonal communication can be. So now that I'm almost out of my 15 minutes for this screencast, I am going to stop and start another one. But where we're headed from here is we're actually going to talk about ways we can define intrapersonal communication in a useful way for us to study it and make our lives better. So I'll see you in the next screencast.